Hi, everybody. I am Dr. Becky Whetstone, and I want to thank you and welcome you to my first live podcast on the truth about your relationship with Dr. Becky Whetstone. It is sponsored by Relationship University, where anyone can enroll and have a community where we teach and you learn all the relationship skills our families should have taught us but didn't. Are you arguing with your partner? You need Relationship University. So look for Relationship University under the Learn button on the Marriage Crisis Manager website, or you can contact me here for more information. Our first class is September 22nd, and I'm so excited about it. Today, we're going to talk about how not to take things personally. But first, since it's my first time doing this, I wanted to introduce myself. I'm Becky Whetstone. I've been relationship obsessed my entire life, but a therapist or marriage and family therapist for over 20 years. I'm a journalist and a writer. My favorite thing to do is to write and talk about relationships. I literally could do it 24/7. By the way, although I live in Little Rock, Arkansas, today I'm talking to you from a hotel in Memphis, Tennessee. So, yay me and Memphis, Tennessee. But forgive me for my rudimentary environment, but I wanted to be here for this. I've been so excited about going live for the first time, but you can imagine it's nerve wracking, but I'll get used to it. Okay, so I write a blog about relationships and I wrote the book, I Think I Want Out: What to Do When One of You Wants to End Your Marriage. This book was based on research I found explaining how to help couples on the brink. I created the Marriage Crisis Manager website and dedicated myself to helping couples on the brink because marriage therapists aren't trained to do that. And if you've ever had a marriage crisis and you start looking for help for that, you find out that marriage therapists don't know anything about how to help couples in crisis. And with 600,000 Americans divorcing each year, there's a huge need and, of course, a void in my profession when couples go looking for solid, experienced help when one person is leaning away and out of the marriage and doesn't really want to do marriage therapy. So, this is an in between place when you're undecided. I created marriage crisis management to assist all the individuals and couples out there whose marriages are crumbling and they have no idea what to do. Part of helping couples in crisis or couples who are hopelessly stuck and can't communicate, who don't want a divorce and don't know how to be together, is teaching them the basic relationship and life skills they never learned because our culture fails us and teaches us too much of what we don't need to know and not enough of what we'll actually use. And the absolute first thing we have to learn is to become self aware. And I call that like being tuned into yourself, like a radio station, and pay attention to what we're thinking and feeling at any given time. Without self awareness, you're just never going to get to a super healthy place. Okay. You've got to be aware of what you're thinking, what you're doing, and how you're conducting yourself. And the second thing to know is what healthy self esteem is and to do the work necessary so you can solidly value yourself unconditionally. Valuing yourself is so important. And if you're a person who takes things personally, I know that you need to be listening to this. And you cannot learn how not to take things personally without the self-esteem piece, okay? I cannot stress enough how important this is. How you think about yourself will trickle down to every single thing you do in your career, your relationships, and I could go on and on. So here is the very brief rub about how everything goes wrong for us emotionally, taking us ultimately to the point of taking things personally. The first being when we're very young, we look at what our families and culture expect of us, and we decide that we aren't good enough. We don't measure up. Some people tell themselves they're defective. Something's wrong with me. I don't feel like I fit in. When this happens, that negative voice in our head arrives and becomes a continuous narrator and commenter, and really a tormentor of all the ways it believes we fall short. Mine was always hammering me about my looks and my weight because those were very common discussions and things in my family, my biological family culture. And so it's almost like I took the voices of my family members who were so negative and critical, and I'm carrying those voices right here in my head, talking about how I look in those pants. You look fat. You shouldn't wear that, blah, blah, blah. So, this experience of deciding with your very, very young mind that you're not good enough is called taking on toxic shame. And most people don't really understand what toxic shame is, but it is, I think, responsible for all misery and suffering, or most all misery and suffering that comes from how we think and our relationships. So we can pretty much say that we all take on toxic shame in our childhood. I've never met anyone who didn't. It causes us to become emotionally disabled, and of course, my job as a therapist, and then having this relationship university, is I want to teach people how to overcome all these disabilities that we took on in our childhood, because we can learn new things and become more mature and adult in our relationships. So, but the truth is, all of us had continuous traumas driven by toxic shame in our childhood. And once we have it, then we start, like I said, that negative conversation in our head, and we compare ourselves negatively to others. We take things personally, and all of this becomes our complex trauma. A lot of people try to argue with me and tell me they don't think they have trauma because they don't remember they had a great childhood, and they don't remember anything bad. But I know they do have it because I'll see the signs and symptoms of it, and how they talk about themselves and others. It will show up, and I'll be able to see it, so they won't be able to deny it. Another thing is that probably most of our childhood memories are what we call implicit. We don't even remember them. They're stored in our subconscious mind. So just because you can't cognitively locate where your trauma came from does not mean you don't have it and lots of it. So one of the telltale signs of having childhood trauma is taking things personally, or think of it like this. I say something to you that's a complaint. I might say, "Hey, you look like you got up on the wrong side of the bed this morning." And then your brain hears that, and it processes it as an insult when I just meant it as a neutral comment. And but your brain took it as an insult, and it senses a threat or attack. Then it fires up your sympathetic nervous system, just like if you were in a car wreck or a house fire, and you go into the fight, flight, or freeze response, where you regress either to a 9-year-old schoolyard bully and let whoever it is personally, like, either verbally or physically have it, or you run away or you shut down. All of these responses are not conducive to having a healthy relationship. So any trauma couples therapist like me is going to be working with you to have you where your nervous system rarely activates over things that people say or do. So that right there, if I see a person in a session get, like what we call in Arkansas, get riled up, that right there, your nervous system getting activated over something someone said or didn't do, that tells me you have childhood developmental trauma, also called complex trauma. I've never met one person that doesn't have that childhood trauma from the past, which is basically wounds and baggage from the past, which, from very long ago, they're like little emotional landmines of pain all stored in your subconscious mind and your body. And it's so easy to traumatize a child and an adult. We don't stop getting traumatized just because we are children. I have clients who get traumatized 4 or 5 times within one session when they're talking with their spouse. And most of us have thousands of unhealed traumas, and where it shows up the most is in our close interpersonal relationships. That's why people will tell me all the time, "Well, I'm not like this at work. It's only like this in the home." Of course, because these are your most close, intense relationships. And our romantic relationships, our brain kind of processes it as like a maternal relationship. And like if your mother, having your mother against you or not liking you or something is extremely emotionally painful. So if my wound is toxic shame and you say something I perceive as negative to me, about me, toward me, I'll have a toxic shame attack and my nervous system's going to fire up. And by the way, another interesting thing about all of this is that what humans do to compensate for not feeling good enough is to become a pleaser, a perfectionist, overachiever, and many other things, and then drive themselves crazy with it. I'm a recovering pleaser myself, and I drove myself crazy trying to make myself be a pleaser in any given situation when the real Becky was sitting over here wanting me to do something else. And that something else was probably much healthier than what my pleaser was trying to get me to do. But anyway, pleasers, we'll have to do a whole live talk about that because there's so many pleasers out there and it's just so dysfunctional. And underneath it, most people, pleasers, are very angry people because they don't have the courage to speak out and advocate for themselves. But that's a whole nother subject. But all of these things are intertwined and begin with toxic shame. As we learn what it is to be an emotionally healthy adult, those false personas will and must be dismantled like I dismantled my pleaser. And you will seek then to find out who was underneath that all along, the authentic self. That's the way and the path to inner peace. So we peel back the onion layers of all the phoniness and the stoicism and all that stuff. And there's actually a human being under there with thoughts and feelings and all that going on. And we're going to want you to be vulnerable and show us who you really are, come what may. So here we are, taught to conform our entire lives. And guess what? Getting healthy involves unlearning many of those previous beliefs about yourself and others and values. A huge part of therapy is, you know, some people will tell me, or who are in the most horrible marriage, they'll say, I don't believe in divorce. So they just sit there and put up with whatever their spouse does, however abusive and awful it is, because they don't believe in divorce. And maybe that old belief isn't serving them well. Maybe that's a belief that we need to talk about in therapy and see if that belief is healthy for them, is benefiting them or keeping them in unhealthy situations. So it's really important to go back over your beliefs and values and see if they're still working for you, and updating and tweaking them along the way. Developing a positive relationship with yourself is the thing you have to do to overcome toxic shame, is to start accepting yourself, getting to know you, accepting you the way you are, flaws and all, because we're all flawed. And then you have to learn to protect yourself moving forward. When you have a positive relationship with yourself, that is synonymous with taking very good care of yourself. Very good care of yourself. And part of taking care of yourself is you're no longer verbally beating yourself up, and you're being very kind and tender to yourself. So, to get to that positive self-esteem place, the healthy kind, you have to understand that we are all of equal value. And now I'm describing what self-esteem really is, okay? The healthy kind, you have to understand that we are all of equal value. I am of equal value to Paul McCartney. Now, he has more money and he can write songs and do things that I can't do. But that doesn't make him more valuable than I am as a human being. We are of equal value because a human's value is defined by being a human being, which is a very valuable and precious thing. When you were a baby, you might have been behind the glass in the hospital in those little rows of babies in the baby beds. And one of my clients who don't value themselves, I have them picture that window looking at all the babies in the maternity ward, and I say to them, do you think that any of those babies are less valuable than the others? And they'll go, of course not. And have those babies had to behave or do a certain thing to be valued or valuable? Oh no, look at them, they're just so precious, they're human beings, they're little babies. Well, guess what? You are one of those babies that was behind the glass, and now you're grown up. And so if you understand that you were born valuable and you did not have to earn love or value, then you're going to have to accept that you are inherently valuable and it cannot be lost. You will always have it, and we always have it. It has nothing, self-esteem has zero to do with external things like money, looks, talent. So at the end of the day, if you have that kind of self-esteem dependent on external things, like I can only be happy and like myself if I have $200,000 in the bank, like in 1929, the people who their whole self-esteem was built on their wealth. When the stock market crashed, they went and jumped out windows because they lost their sense of self. So you can see what a flimsy way to live that is, making your self-esteem dependent on external things. So we have to have conversations to change your mind about the external things. I need the people I work with to make the decision that they value themselves. I really believe it comes down to just deciding, you know what? I value me. I am no better, no worse than anybody else. I have gifts and talents that other people don't have, and they've got gifts and talents that I don't have. And I accept who I am and what I am just the way I am. And you can love and nurture and take care of your mistake-making, flawed self. So we have to accept that we're imperfect animals and everyone else is too. It was a relief for me to find out that I didn't have to be a certain way before I could value myself. It was a relief for me to find out I could value and accept myself, even though for sure I am weird, I am quirky, I am flawed, and I am a mistake maker. Because you know what? I think all of us are weird and quirky and mistake makers. And that's just the way we are designed as human beings, also unique and different. So if I can get a person to value themselves, then the next step is to teach them how to protect themselves physically and emotionally as a form of self-care. That means understanding and implementing healthy boundaries. Boundaries are a human being's protection system. And almost nobody I work with has healthy self care and boundaries. And so I spend my days teaching these basic skills to people, and the same skills over and over and over again, day in, day out. And that's one reason I'm talking about this stuff more publicly now. And I've created Relationship University, because a lot of marriage problems and depression and anxiety problems could be completely solved by learning these relationship skills and going into recovery from your childhood developmental trauma. So, to recap, before a person learns and changes these things, a person who has toxic shame has and no ability to protect themselves from what others think of them will take things personally. So, taking things personally is a sign and a symptom that you don't have a good relationship with yourself and you do not have appropriate boundaries to protect yourself from incoming information. So, if I take something personally, it's because someone did or said something that flew in and hit one of my old wounds. I get activated. My nervous system activates when one of my old wounds gets hit, and my entire physiology changes in that moment. My heart's going to race, and I feel nervous and anxious. For me, it always feels like the room is closing in on me. I feel nervous and anxious. My mood changes, and that's why we call it getting activated. It's like you're fired up. You're fired up because your brain is telling you basically that your life is under threat, even though it isn't. It's just something that someone said or did. Some of those old wound themes are usually things like, well, people think they're better than I am, or people think I'm stupid. If a person doesn't have those solid and self-esteem and boundaries, and I say, hey, did you know you left your wet laundry in the washer for days? You don't hear that I'm trying to help you. Your brain is going to make up that what I'm telling you is, hey, there's something wrong with you because you left your laundry in the washer for a few days. But I didn't say that there was something wrong with you. I just said, hey, did you know? Right then, though, if you take things personally, your mood drops and the conversation goes south. And the speaker who was talking about the laundry becomes completely perplexed because they're going, why are you so upset? I was just trying to help you. But you really believe that they meant to hurt you when they did not. And you can see how this would just negatively affect relationships day after day after day. That's what I work with. So if I see you take something personally, it tells me that number one, you do not value yourself in a healthy way, and two, you do not have the boundaries. So one thing I have to tell you, y'all have got to get this. Like 95% of all humans are not seekers. They do not go out and learn how to be healthy mentally and emotionally. They're just going out operating on instinct, and then they load it up with trauma. They're wounded pups. And their disabilities, their emotional disabilities show up in all sorts of ways. And some people that I work with hate themselves and they hate human beings. And that's their stance from the get go. And so they're not, if they hate human beings, they're going to hate me no matter what I do, no matter what I do. And everything I say will be viewed through a negative lens. And and there's nothing I could do to get them to like me because they're from their life experiences, they've concluded that human beings are bad and that they should not be trusted, right? So since that person sees everything through a negative lens, why on earth would I take their bad thoughts about me personally? Like, isn't that about them and not me? So it's so important for you to accept yourself as whatever kind of animal you are. Like your partner may be, I use this analogy all the time. Your partner may be a giraffe. You may be a deer. And in each one of you is a completely different animal. with different needs, different ways of viewing the world, different instincts, and all that kind of stuff. And so, if other people don't like a giraffe for whatever reason, it's because of their own mental and emotional disabilities and negative viewpoints, and not about the fact that we are defective in any way for being a giraffe or a gazelle or a deer or whatever it is we are. So, to break it down, you're talking to somebody and they roll their eyes. So that's the situation. This is the situation of taking things personally. I'm talking to someone and I see them roll their eyes. That's the situation. And then what happens is we human beings, we're meaning making animals. And like right now, I don't know why that person rolled their eyes at me. I have no idea. So, but because I'm a human being, my brain's going to want me to make up a meaning about why that person rolled their eyes. All too often, though, the meanings that we human beings are incorrect, but we tell ourselves something negative because we have that toxic shame going on, and we allow it to change our mood. So part of adulting in boundaries is understanding that what other people think and say about you has everything to do with all of their life experiences and how they perceive things, and their perception about you is often completely incorrect. And that's not on you. And we just sort of have to let people have their incorrect perceptions. I mean, just like, oh, so, I can remember a girl in high school, was short and nasty to me, and I went up to her after class one night because this had been going on for weeks and weeks, her snide comments. And I said, hey, why are you talking like this to me about me and to me in class? What did I ever do to you? And she said, well, you're just like all those girls I used to know in high school, the popular girls who would put me down, the cheerleaders. And, I know the kind of person you are. And I was like, oh my God. And I told her, I said, well, just for your information, in high school, I was a nonconformist. And I was never a cheerleader. I would have died before I'd have become a cheerleader. So, your assumptions about me are completely and totally wrong. But that's the lens in which she made her meaning. And that's why I couldn't understand why she was treating me that way and talking to me in that way. So, can you let people be incorrect about you and stay standing in confidence, knowing, hey, I'm good enough, and what this girl is making up over there about me has nothing to do with me, and it doesn't matter. In this conversation with yourself, you are setting a boundary for yourself, not to let what that person is saying to you to come into your zone and lower your vibration. So you're just taking in the information, going, this isn't about me, and so you just let it stop right there, rather than absorb it into your body and allow it to lower your mood. You have nothing to prove anyone. You don't need to defend yourself. I can't tell you how many times I have to tell clients, even in front of their spouses, you don't need to explain yourself right here. You don't you don't need to defend yourself. Just let them believe what they believe, you know, and if that person was healthier, they would be more curious and want to talk to you to find out who you are, rather than make assumptions about who you are or why you were doing what you were doing. But people are notoriously lazy and just jump to a quick conclusion without asking for discernment or more information. Like just the words, hey, what did you mean by that, would prevent a lot of trouble in relationships. Just remember, you have nothing to prove, and you don't need to defend yourself to ridiculous people out there who make up ridiculous things about you. 95% of people are significantly dysfunctional. And yeah, they're out there making money and having jobs and kids and careers and all that stuff. But emotionally and mentally, they're extremely dysfunctional. Why would you care about what those people think about you? Um, so when people are doing that ridiculous meaning making stuff, I just want you to know that the only thing you are to take from that is they're showing you who they are. When people open their mouth, they are showing you who they are, and that's it. Okay. They don't know who you are or anything about you, so they can't speak on that. Only you know those things, okay? And telling yourself that is another good boundary. Only I know what I think and feel. Only I know what I really meant. No one else can tell me those things. And of course, like I said, we're all just doing our best day to day, right? We're trying to be good and decent people, but we screw up sometimes. Sometimes I'm not nice, and I want to be nice 100% of the time, but I'm not always nice. And so sometimes all of us know we could have done better, and in those cases, you've got to have the ego strength, the knowing that you're good enough, but also you make mistakes, and that's the nature of the human being. So if I have that strong sense of self and I screw up, I can say, well, that's okay. I don't need to beat myself up over this. And if I need to correct something with somebody, I will. So when you're feeling down, you also need to comfort yourself. That I used to be, I'd beat myself up, but no, now I've got a voice of compassion and caring over here. It's sort of for me an imaginary guardian angel or mother, and she's very tender to me, and she will not let me beat myself up. Even my past self, who was so dysfunctional and made so many mistakes, she helps me love and understand those Beckys of the past. And that's such a healthy exercise. And we do all kinds of stuff like that in relationship university. There's so much more to talk about. I could talk about relationships all day long, like I said. If you enjoy learning about relationships, please like and subscribe and share with your friends, and check out my relationship university on marriagecrisismanager.com, where we do dive into every aspect of being a functional adult in all relationships. For today's subject, I recommend you enhance and deepen your understanding by reading the book, The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. He explains how not to take things personally so beautifully. So I finished my first live Substack. I hope that you found it interesting. Nothing would mean more to me than if you liked, subscribed, and shared it with your friends. And I'll see you soon in the next live Substack Relationship University class. This is Becky Whetstone, the Marriage Crisis Manager.